Before the signs unfold, make sure to pause, like this message, subscribe to stay aligned, and tap the bell so the next word reaches you when it matters most. What you're about to hear isn't just for today. It's confirmation for what you've been wrestling with in silence. Not every wound needs healing. Some need release. And too many hearts are bleeding because they're holding on to what heaven already removed. There was a moment when peace started to fade. A shift. A quiet warning in the spirit. But instead of letting go, the soul held tighter. Hoping, fixing, pleading, trying to restore what was already emptied of purpose. The relationship, the idea, the path, once right, now misaligned. But emotion fought discernment. Memories argued with truth. And now, peace feels distant, and rest has become rare. This is the danger of trying to heal what was never meant to stay. Exhaustion without direction, effort without peace, closeness without connection. It looks alive, but spiritually it's already gone. And heaven never asked for resurrection where release was required. Some doors were closed not to test strength, but to protect calling. But the heart still knocked, still lingered, still whispered, maybe it can work if I try harder. But effort cannot reverse what obedience must complete. Restoration is holy, but only when it's ordained. This is the first sign, trying to repair what keeps breaking the soul. Patchwork peace that never lasts. Apologies that don't bear fruit. Circles that feel familiar but suffocate growth. The truth is clear, but comfort keeps lying. Not every ending is failure. Not every silence is absence. Some endings are divine exits, and the longer they're resisted, the louder the soul will groan under the weight of delay. Let what left stay gone. Let what ended remain finished. Release is not weakness, it's alignment. And only in release can healing truly begin. Peace always leaves first. Not in anger, not in noise, but in quietness. It slips away while the soul pretends nothing changed. The conversations feel colder, the presence heavier, the smile more forced. And yet, the heart stays, not out of joy, but out of fear. Fear of starting over, fear of being alone, fear that leaving means failing. So the soul lingers where the spirit already departed. This is the second sign, remaining where peace no longer lives, where clarity used to come easily, but now confusion rises like fog, where prayer once flowed, but now feels like echo. Stillness is gone, and in its place, a haunting question. Why am I still here? Not every absence means it's time to fight harder. Sometimes, it's time to walk. There is danger in forcing presence in a place where heaven has withdrawn permission. Holding on to what once brought comfort, but now breeds conflict. Trying to revive what only worked in a previous season. Peace is not a luxury. It's a signal. And when it disappears, it's not to punish, but to redirect. But many ignore the silence, rewrite the signs, and convince themselves that enduring misery is the price of love, loyalty, or growth. But growth never requires suffocation. Love does not demand self-erasure, and purpose never requires remaining in what drains the spirit. If peace has left, consider this the mercy of heaven. The soul knows what the heart resists. It's time to let go. The absence of peace is not random. It's prophetic. And the longer it's ignored, the louder the spiritual cost. Don't stay where peace walked out. Don't call comfort what has become captivity. Let the silence speak what words cannot. This is not your place anymore. There comes a point when explanation becomes a form of disobedience. The heart tries to make it make sense. To them, to self, to the memory of what once was. Words are rehearsed, reasons offered, truth softened, all in an effort to justify staying, holding, continuing. But what God has ended doesn't require defense, it requires distance. This is the third sign, the compulsion to keep explaining what your spirit already knows is finished. The door is closed, but conversation keeps it cracked. The season is over, but texts still get answered. The conviction is clear, but the fear of misunderstanding keeps dragging your soul back into old places. The desire to be understood becomes louder than the need to obey. But they don't need to understand. They don't need to agree. They don't even need to know why. When heaven ends a thing, clarity is not a group project. And dragging the dead season back into dialogue only resurrects confusion. Peace is not preserved through endless explanation. Closure doesn't require validation. Some endings come with silence because God wants the focus not on who left, but on what's next. And the more you explain, the more you delay. Because every conversation is an invitation back into the pain you were delivered from. Obedience isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like saying nothing, like deleting the draft, like letting them wonder, like honoring the command in silence. Don't defend what God already dismissed. Don't soften what the Spirit made sharp. The more you try to make others understand the exit, the more you reattach to what wounded you. Release doesn't require approval. It requires trust. And freedom doesn't start when others agree. It starts when you stop explaining. The prayer sounds right. God, bring peace, heal this, restore me. But underneath the words is a grip that won't loosen, a silent refusal to release what's causing the pain. And this is the fourth sign, asking heaven for freedom while building walls around the very thing that keeps the soul bound. Pain becomes familiar, and with familiarity comes attachment. So instead of letting go, the soul learns to live around it, numb it, manage it, decorate it, even defend it. But wounds cannot be healed while they're being shielded, and peace will never dwell in a place where pain is protected more than purpose. There are habits that were supposed to be broken, but you covered them in routine. There are people who were meant to be removed, but you disguised them in excuses. There are environments that keep triggering the wound, but you keep walking into them, calling it strength. Heaven hears the prayer, but also sees the pattern. The lips ask for peace, but the heart keeps choosing noise. The spirit craves release, but the flesh still feeds the wound. And now the soul is stuck between desire and denial, knowing what needs to go, but clinging to the illusion that it still might change. But healing doesn't begin with hope. It begins with honesty, the kind that says, "This hurts, but I know it's over." The kind that says, "I'm tired of pretending this is fine." The kind that opens the hand, deletes the number, shuts the door, breaks the cycle, and means it. Peace is possible. It's waiting. But it won't compete with what you keep defending. Let go of the pain you've been protecting. It's not your identity. It's not your assignment. And it's not your future. There is a difference between a season and a cycle. A season shifts by design. A cycle repeats by choice. And this is the fifth sign, calling something temporary that was never supposed to exist at all. Or worse, something that has already been repeated far too many times. It began with grace, a moment of learning, a space to grow. But instead of graduating, the soul circled back to the same argument, back to the same apology, back to the same person, situation, silence, guilt. The faces might change, the setting might look new, but the feeling, always the same. That's not growth, that's a pattern, and God never meant for your life to be lived in loops, but it's easier to call it a season. Seasons sound spiritual, they sound temporary, they let the heart rest in delay. But delay becomes disobedience when the Spirit already gave instructions to move. Cycles are broken by confrontation, not comfort. And if the atmosphere keeps repeating, if the wound keeps opening, if the outcome is predictable, then it's no longer God's process. It's your permission. The truth is hard, but clarity always is. What was once a test has become a trap, and it's being justified with words like grace, growth, and loyalty. But none of those things require pain on repeat. It's time to stop calling bondage by another name, to stop covering dysfunction in spiritual language. Heaven is not in this cycle. Heaven already gave the way out, but it requires letting go of what's familiar and stepping into what's unknown. The cycle won't break until the lie does. This isn't a season anymore. It's a delay, and the cost of staying is growing heavier every day. The signs were never absent. They were just quiet. The shift in atmosphere. The way peace faded after every interaction. The dreams that unsettled more than soothed. But when the answer wasn't what the heart wanted, it was labeled confusion, not confirmation. And this is the sixth sign. Begging God for a word while ignoring the silence already speaking. Heaven rarely repeats what has already been made clear. The silence isn't because God left. It's because he already spoke. Again and again. Through peace that vanished. Through delays that kept multiplying. Through doors that wouldn't open no matter how hard they were pushed. Yet still, the soul asks, just one more sign. But more signs don't bring obedience. Surrender does. The silence isn't punishment, it's mercy. It's the sound of God stepping back, waiting, watching. Will you obey what's already known? Or will you keep stalling, calling it seeking? When the soul truly wants truth, silence is loud. It's full, it echoes. But when the soul only wants permission to stay where it shouldn't, silence feels empty. And the longer it's resisted, the easier it is to pretend God hasn't spoken, when in reality, he stopped repeating. Faith doesn't always feel good, and truth doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes clarity arrives in what no longer works, in the closed door, in the restless sleep, in the friendship that always wounds, in the job that drains life instead of giving it, in the relationship that God keeps pulling away, but you keep chasing. Silence is a decision from heaven, not to confuse, but to confirm. The question now isn't, what is God saying? It's, will you finally respond? Loyalty sounds noble, it feels honorable, and from the outside it looks like strength. But not all loyalty is rooted in love. Some of it is disguised fear. And this is the seventh sign, staying connected out of fear of loss, not faith in purpose. The soul clings not because it believes, but because it's terrified of what life looks like without that person, that rhythm, that environment. It's not covenant, it's control. Not alignment, but addiction to familiarity. You call it patience, but it's paralysis. You call it commitment, but it's codependence. There's a quiet panic in the silence, a need to stay visible, needed, useful. Because if you walk away, who are you without the role you played for so long? This kind of fear will keep you loyal to what's breaking you. It will convince you to protect what's already poisoned. It will paint compromise as virtue and silence as peace. But the longer you stay, the more you begin to shrink, not physically, but spiritually. Purpose dims, discernment dulls, identity bends to fit a version of you that God never authored. Heaven honors true loyalty, but not to dysfunction, not to manipulation, not to cycles that destroy what God is trying to rebuild. If loyalty means denying the voice of the Spirit to appease someone else, then it's no longer love. It's bondage. God doesn't call people to serve idols in human form, and not every connection is covenant. Some are chains. Chains built with memories, moments, emotions, but still chains, and no amount of loyalty will turn chains into purpose. This is the moment to be honest. That loyalty you're holding on to, is it rooted in truth or in fear? And if fear is the root, then freedom is the only faithful response. Closure is not always given by people. Sometimes it's given by patterns, by silence, by the way they left, the way they changed, the way the peace broke and never returned. And this is the eighth sign, delaying release by waiting for closure that already came, just not in the way you wanted. Heaven doesn't always offer explanations. Sometimes it just removes, quietly, suddenly, without the apology, without the reason, without the bow that makes it easier to understand. Because God's priority isn't your comfort, it's your alignment. Still, the soul waits for the text that won't come, for the confession they'll never give, for the conversation that would only reopen the wound heaven already began to heal. And in the waiting, the enemy whispers, if they explain it, you'll be able to move on. But that's a lie. The clarity already arrived. It just didn't feel like closure. The truth, their distance was clarity. Their silence was clarity. The sudden shift wasn't random. It was revelation. The relationship didn't die without reason. The connection didn't crumble without cause. God removed what couldn't stay, not because he was cruel, but because he heard conversations you didn't. He saw intentions never spoken. He protected you from prayers you didn't know how to pray. Stop waiting for them to make it make sense. It won't. Stop needing closure from the same place that broke you. They were a chapter, not the conclusion. And the longer you beg for the why, the longer you delay the what's next. This is the moment to stop chasing closure and start embracing clarity. Let what ended end, and let God finish the healing without the distraction of a final conversation. Love was never supposed to feel like war. Not the kind that drains you, not the kind that makes you question your worth, not the kind that requires silence, shrinking, self-erasure just to keep the connection alive. And this is the 9th sign. Calling it love when it consistently costs your peace. Love builds, love restores, love corrects, yes, but never confuses. Love sharpens, but it never destroys identity. And yet many stay in places where every conversation ends in tension. Every moment together leaves the soul quieter, more uncertain. Then comes the rationalization. They're just going through something. I'm probably too sensitive. Maybe it's me. But the fruit of a thing reveals its root. And when the fruit is fear, exhaustion, or emotional instability, that's not love. It's soul compromise. God doesn't require your peace as a sacrifice to prove loyalty to someone who never carried your heart with honor. That was never the assignment. That was never the plan. But peace became the payment. And now you're drained, but still giving. Quiet, but still present. Spiritually starving while emotionally attached. This is not love. This is survival. And survival is not the standard of heaven. There are connections that pull you away from clarity, and yet you call it love because the bond feels deep. But deep doesn't mean healthy. Deep doesn't mean divine. Some ties feel strong because they're tied to trauma, not purpose. Real love brings presence, not pressure. Growth, not guilt. Mutual surrender, not manipulation. If your peace has to die so something can live, then what's living is not love. It's control. This is the moment to ask the hard question. Does this connection carry your soul closer to God, or only further into silence and self-doubt? If peace is the price, then love has already left. Some vessels are cracked on purpose, not because they're broken, but because God never meant for them to carry what you've been trying to pour. And this is the 10th sign. Constantly giving, pouring, praying, showing up, yet nothing changes. No growth, no return, no shift, just more emptiness. You call it faithfulness. Heaven calls it misalignment. You show up with full hands, full heart, full intention. But every time you give, the atmosphere stays the same. The soil doesn't respond. The spirit doesn't shift. The connection doesn't deepen. And you begin to wonder if you're the problem. But it's not that you're empty. It's that they have no capacity. When God removes capacity from a place, no amount of effort can restore it. He will close hearts. He will dry up doors. He will silence responses, not to wound you, but to free you. Because some places were never meant to carry your anointing. Some people can't receive your presence without misusing it, and some assignments were seasonal, but you stayed beyond the timing. And now the soul is tired, not because it's weak, but because it's been pouring into what's no longer open. You think you're being loyal, but heaven sees disobedience covered in good intentions. You were never called to force what no longer receives, never asked to carry what no longer carries you. The oil is precious, the calling is weighty, the purpose is too urgent to waste on ground that no longer responds to rain. Stop confusing effort with obedience. Stop mistaking exhaustion for spiritual warfare. Sometimes it's just misplacement. This is the word. Withdraw from where the grace lifted. Let dry places stay dry, and pour where there is hunger, not resistance. Hope is holy, but misplaced hope becomes a trap. And this is the 11th sign, holding out for their change while ignoring your own, waiting for them to finally see what you saw from the beginning, praying they'll catch up, wake up, show up. But what if they were never meant to come with you? There comes a point when your growth becomes the separation, not pride, not bitterness, just evidence that the shift already happened, in you. You don't talk the same. You don't laugh at the same things. You don't find peace in the same places. And yet, you still wait. For what? For them to become who you imagined they could be? Or for you to feel justified in walking away? But the truth is simple. They don't have to change for your calling to continue. And often, the more you grow, the more uncomfortable their presence becomes. Not because you're better, but because your spirit stopped blending in. God already moved you, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. But your feet stayed in place out of loyalty to the old version of them, the one you believed in, the one you prayed for. But you can't anchor your future to who someone used to be. This is where obedience gets tested. Will you stay behind with what refuses to shift, or will you step fully into the place your heart already lives? God isn't waiting on them. He's waiting on you to stop waiting on them. Some people were your beginning, not your becoming. Some connections were your introduction, not your destiny. They may never change, and that's not your failure. It's their choice. But your future is not tied to their delay. Let go of the version of them you built in your mind. Walk with the shift that already happened in your soul. Freedom doesn't always feel final. Sometimes it feels empty, quiet, even lonely. And this is the 12th and final sign, still trying to fix, reach, revive what God has already released you from. The chains are broken, but the soul still returns to where the pain began. Not because of love, but because of habit. Not because there's hope, but because there's history. You've been freed, but the memory still speaks. You've been loosed, but the pull of old patterns still whispers, go back, try again. Maybe it wasn't over. But it was. Deliverance happened. The weight lifted. The clarity came. The storm passed. Yet the heart keeps returning, replaying what went wrong, what could have changed, what might still be redeemed. But some things aren't meant to be healed. Some things are meant to be left behind. God isn't asking for another round of effort. He's asking for full obedience. Obedience that doesn't need closure. Obedience that doesn't need validation. Obedience that simply says, if you released me from it, I won't resurrect it. There's a danger in trying to re-enter what grace already closed, in trying to prove you could handle what you were never meant to carry. You weren't weak. You were faithful. You didn't fail. You outgrew. And now it's time to stop grieving what God already used. It was never the destination, only a tool for transformation. You don't have to fight anymore. The battle is over. The door is closed. The permission has been revoked. Walk forward, not to prove something, but because the Spirit already moved on. Peace is on the other side of letting go, completely.